Once upon a time, in a small village at the edge of a great forest, there lived a sweet little girl who was loved by everyone who met her. She had a very kind heart, and she always wore a beautiful red cloak with a hood, which her grandmother had made for her. Because of this, everyone in the village called her Little Red Riding Hood. One sunny morning, Little Red Riding Hood's mother called her into the house. "I need you to take this basket of food to your grandmother," her mother said. "She's feeling ill, and she lives deep in the forest. Make sure you go straight to her house and don't talk to anyone along the way. And don't stray from the path." Little Red Riding Hood nodded. She kissed her mother goodbye, and with a smile she set off for her grandmother's house, the basket of food swinging in her hand. The forest was beautiful, with birds singing and flowers blooming along the path. But it was also dark and mysterious, with tall trees and twisting paths that seemed to go on forever. As Little Red Riding Hood walked, she admired the flowers and stopped to pick some for her grandmother. She was so absorbed in what she was doing that she didn't notice a sly, sneaky wolf watching her from behind a tree. The wolf was very hungry, and he wanted to find a way to eat both Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. So, he approached the little girl and asked in his most friendly voice, "Good morning, Little Red Riding Hood. Where are you going today?" Little Red Riding Hood was startled at first, but then smiled and replied, "I'm going to visit my grandmother. She lives in a cottage in the forest, not too far from here." "Ah, how nice," said the wolf, pretending to be kind. "And what are you carrying in that basket?" "I have some food for her," Little Red Riding Hood answered, not suspecting that the wolf had bad intentions. The wolf thought for a moment. He wanted to get to the grandmother's house before Little Red Riding Hood, so he could eat them both. So he said, "Why don't you pick some flowers for your grandmother, Little Red Riding Hood? I'm sure she would love some beautiful flowers. While you're doing that, I'll take a shortcut to her house." Little Red Riding Hood thought that was a good idea. She thanked the wolf and began picking more flowers, while the wolf, being very quick, ran off through a secret path to Grandma's house. The wolf arrived at the cottage before Little Red Riding Hood and knocked on the door with a deep voice, imitating the tone of the grandmother. "Grandmother, it's me, Little Red Riding Hood," the wolf said, trying to sound like the little girl. "Come in, my dear," said Grandma, who was lying in bed, feeling very sick. She did not suspect that anything was wrong. But when the door creaked open, the wolf quickly pounced on Grandma, swallowed her whole, and then put on her nightgown and glasses. He climbed into Grandma's bed, pulling the covers up to his nose, hoping to trick Little Red Riding Hood. Meanwhile, Little Red Riding Hood had finished picking flowers and was heading towards her grandmother's house. She sang happily to herself as she walked, not realizing the danger that lay ahead. When she arrived at the cottage, she noticed that the door was slightly ajar. Feeling a little uneasy, she slowly stepped inside and called out, "Grandmother, are you home?" "Come in, my dear," said the wolf in a raspy voice from the bed. Little Red Riding Hood was puzzled. "Grandmother, what big eyes you have," she said as she entered the room. "All the better to see you with, my dear," replied the wolf with a sinister grin. "Grandmother, what big ears you have," she said, inching closer to the bed. "All the better to hear you with, my dear." the wolf said, licking his lips. "Grandmother, what big teeth you have!" Little Red Riding Hood exclaimed, feeling scared now. "All the better to eat you with, my dear," the wolf roared, and he leaped out of the bed with his sharp teeth bared. But just as the wolf was about to pounce on Little Red Riding Hood, a loud knock sounded at the door. The huntsman, who lived nearby, had heard strange noises and had come to check on Grandma's house. The huntsman rushed inside, and when he saw the wolf attacking Little Red Riding Hood, he grabbed his axe and swung it at the wolf. With one powerful chop, the huntsman killed the wolf and saved both Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother. Little Red Riding Hood hugged the huntsman and thanked him. The huntsman helped her open the door to Grandma's room, and there they found Grandma safe and sound. The wolf had not harmed her at all, for she had hidden inside a cupboard when the wolf arrived. From that day on, Little Red Riding Hood learned an important lesson. She promised her mother that she would always stay on the path and never talk to strangers again. And as for the huntsman, he became a good friend of Little Red Riding Hood and her grandmother, visiting them often to make sure they were safe. And so they all lived happily ever after, with no more wolves to worry about.